Hello everyone, welcome back to our Angular series. So today we're going to continue talking about Angular components and subcomponents. We're going to talk about how they communicate with each other via this input and output parameters. So let's dive right into our code. Right, so here's where we left off with our people app. If you're downloading this on Git, you will need to do a install on npm. So first you have to go to the root of the application, the people app, and do an npm install, or simply npm I. So this npm install is going to take all of the packages that we've been using so far and install it. So notice there is a node modules folder that came up, and that is the way that we transport our code from one location to another. So these node modules are dependencies, and usually these are really big files that we need to transport. And so this process is basically downloading all of these files and installing our application once again. And if you remember how we ran our application before, this is our localhost 4200. And so we do an ng serve, and it is going to run our application. All right, so currently our application looks like this. We have people app, and we have this component that prints out a person. So let's continue working with this. So firstly, I'm just going to make my app look a little bit nicer. I'm going to come over to my index.html. This is kind of like our bootstrap. This is like the root of the application. And I'm going to just copy over the bootstrap link. I'm going to go to the CDN for bootstrap, and I'm going to grab this link for Bootstrap, and I'm just going to bootstrap this up to make things look a little bit better. Around this app root, I actually want to put a div, which is a container that I just want to center everything. So I'm going to make a class, the flex, and flex column, and align items center. I believe that's all I need to do, and everything inside should be centered. So I'm going to put my app root inside, and so this div is going to apply to every one of the elements in the DOM underneath. All right, so if you remember our last discussion, we said the root of the application, we are looking at app component.html. So I'm going to take a look at this for now. And right now we have our title and we have our app person. And our app person is the component that is rendered under the person component. So before we get in any deeper, I actually want to center this h1 as well. So I'm going to go to app.component.css, and I'm going to align the h1s. So I'm going to do the text align and center. All right, so this is going to center my h1s. Now I want you to notice that in this definition, this CSS definition only applies to app component. So it only applies to this h1 and not any other h1 that I have in any other component. So the good thing about modularizing everything is that when I apply a CSS or I apply some kind of style, it will only apply locally and it won't have any effect globally. Per se. Okay, so now you see here that we are going to render out app person. So I'm going to dig one level deep and take a look at app person. And I want to change a few things about my app person. So firstly, if we take a look at our HTML, the first thing I'll do actually is I'll come over to this file, which is spec, and I'm just going to delete this file. Now I will come back to testing a little bit later on, and this is an important thing to do to your applications, but just so that I don't confuse myself, I'm just going to delete that file. So the spec file is really the file that controls all of your testing. And so this is another testing file. So you can write specific tests for all of your components. And that's another advantage of modularizing everything that you have. All right, so if we come to person.html, person component.html, you see right now we're just printing out some default stuff. Now there are many ways that we can print out things dynamically on a component. So I'm just going to come over to this person component.ts for 1 second, and this is where we're going to define all of our variables. If you remember our discussion before about app.component, we had this title variable, which we were able to print out onto the screen by interpolation. So we're going to come over here again, and I'm going to have other examples of ways that we can print things out. So obviously one of the ways that we can print out something is through interpolation, and the other way is that we can use a property binding variable. So I'm going to come over here and let's create a person. So I'm just going to have a person variable, and this is just something that I'm going to keep track of in my class. And I'm going to have a person, and well, it's actually complaining that person doesn't have a type. And I know I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm going to put any for the person. Realistically, you should probably make a class called person and have the different attributes that you can have as a person. So I'm going to make a constructor here. A constructor in this case is just going to initialize this person. And so let's just pretend this person has a name. This person also has an age, and this person also has some other attributes. Maybe I will say that they're an instructor, true, and then maybe one other attribute added on. So added on is just going to be a date. Now I'm just going to, for this one, create a new date, and from that new date, get the time. Right, so this is going to be a very long integer representing the number of milliseconds that has passed since the epoch date of January 1st, 1970. Right, so we have all these people, and this should be this dot person because we're referring to the variable that we have within this class. Okay, great. So in our constructor, we've initialized this person, and now if we wanted to display all of this data within our HTML, we can jump back over to our HTML and use a property binding. So for our property binding, we can, instead of name, we can put a span tag here, and in our span tag, we're going to have a property binding, and this property is called text content. So text content is equal to, and now we have access to the variable person, right? So person is coming from our TS file. So I'm going to take person.name, and that is going to be the text content that's going to be in the span tag. So it's going to replace the span tag with whatever the person's name is, and we'll see that in 1 second. Another way, as we saw before, is through interpolation. And so we can do something like this, and instead of putting date, we're going to just put the variable person dot added on. That is going to print out our number, and then we have our instructor true. And once again, maybe we can do the interpolation here. So person.instructor is going to give me the value true in this case. All right, so I have a couple more buttons that I want to add on here, and there are definitely a couple more things I want to add, but let me just do a quick span tag with these buttons. I'm going to take a span, and I'm going to write both of these buttons. So one of these buttons is called show more, and the other is called delete. Now, some of these features I will add on to a little bit later, but for now, for my delete button and my show button, I just want to add a few classes to it. And so this is, these are just classes that are added from Bootstrap. So this is, we'll do a button outline. This one will be primary. And instead of primary for the delete, I will put the danger one. All right, so we're going to see what that looks like in 1 second. And if we hop over here, you can see that this is what's happening. Okay, so we have person, and then we have the name, we have added on. Added on currently is just a really long integer, and then we have instructor true, and then we have the show more as well as the delete. All right, so next, let's make this CSS look a little bit better. So I'm just going to come over to the person component. Let's add a few more CSS things to this person. So once again, what I'm adding in the CSS is just pertaining to this component. So I'm going to give it a border, and border is going to be 1 pixel. We'll do solid black, and we're going to do a width, which is 40. We'll do 40 viewport width, and then we'll do a padding of 1 EM, and then we'll do a margin of 1 EM as well, and then we'll do a border radius 1 EM. Actually, let's do a little bit less than that, 0.5 EM, and then we'll do a user select none. We don't want the user to be able to select any of the text that's inside, and then finally we'll do a text align center to finish it off. Okay, and finally I want my buttons to have a margin, just a slight margin. So we'll do a margin top and 0.5 EM. Okay, so this looks good to me. Let's come back and just make sure that this looks right. Okay, so everything is centered. This looks a little bit better to me, and all my buttons are still showing up. So this currently is being displayed on my component. Now, you might say, well, that's great. We have this dynamic component that we are displaying onto the screen. So we have, whatever this variable is, it allows us to display it onto the screen. So what if I want to change this person, or what if I want some of these attributes to change, or what if I want to delete this person? So what is the mechanism that's controlling it? So what I want to do is actually keep a list of my friends, right? So I have, one person here. Maybe I want to keep a list of my friends. These are maybe some cards that I want to keep track of, and I just want to, I want to list them out. So here I'm going to create another component, which is going to keep track of my list. Okay, so this is a very standard way of modularizing. We have we print out our data, and if we have some structure to hold these data, we have another component for that. Okay, so I'm going to jump over here and let's open up our terminal, and we were compiled successfully, and you can see that we are actually compiling still. So I'm going to come over here and do an ng generate component. Okay, so generate could also be shortened as G, and if we do a dash skip equals to true, this will skip all of the spec files. So I will get back to testing a little bit later on, but for now I want to skip all of those test files that are generated automatically for me. So I'm going to call this people list. All right, so you can see here it's going to generate everything into this folder called people list, and it's going to skip over the spec file. And so what I want to do is take a look at that, and let's see, let's play around with the people list. All right, so first thing is that we'll go into the people list and take a look right now. You can see that the selector is app people list. Okay, now if you recall, way back over here in my app component.html, I was printing app person. So instead of app person, I now want to print out app people list, and I want to rely on app people list to then print out the people. So I'm going to do app people list here. Whoops, I should. All right, so this is app people list, and then when I go to app people list, the HTML associated with that go to HTML, you see right now it says people works. So instead of that, I want to put app person. So I want to print out app person. Okay, so if we look over here, you can see that nothing has happened. And the reason is because we are actually using a component. So we're using that the people list component to print out app person. It's just that everything is just as is, right? So we really haven't made any changes. But what we want to do now is incorporate a list into the app people list component so that we can do a better job of passing off to app person. All right, so let's go to app people list. And first of all, before we go there, I'm going to go to the component and just copy off. This is the structure of my person. All right, so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to have a list called people. And for people, I'm going to have a constructor, which is that I'm going to initialize this dot people as a list of people that kind of look like this. Okay, so I'm going to have a few more people here and make up a few more people. All right, so let's make up a few more friends. So let's say I have a friend called Sarah, I have a friend called Steve, I have a friend called Jane, and we'll come up with one more name, Jacob. All right, so now we have a list of people, and this is going to be kept in an array called people. I'm going to actually, in this constructor, also initialize another variable called query, and query is going to be a string. And initially, I'm going to initialize this query as being empty. All right, so you're going to see where I'm going to go with this later on, but I'm just going to keep this here for now, just to remind me that I need to do this later on. All right, so for now, it seems like people list is good. I have all of the people here, and now my intent is to be able to pass it off to people list and for to person, and for person to be able to print off all these people. So notice that I have some code for the person component to print off these people already, right? So right now, I don't want this person. Instead, I want a person to be passed in from an outside source. In order to do that, so I'm just going to, over here, get rid of this person. In fact, let me just comment this out so that I still have reference to it later on. And for this person, I'm going to use an annotation called input. Now, this annotation is coming from Angular core. Okay, so if I do a quick fix, it'll say update import from Angular core. You'll notice that it will update this with input. Now, input is just indicating to the to this component that this person is not something that we're going to keep internally. Rather, it is an object that is coming in from external view. Okay, from an external view. So now what we want to do is have people list be able to pass in a person via the HTML. All right, so let's jump over here. I'm going to leave everything as is. So if we take a look at person component.html, everything is still the same. We still have person, we still put added on and so forth. But now you see everything is empty because the people list has not done its job, right? So it has not passed all of those people to the person component. All right, so I'm going to come back to our people list. And I'm going to take these people. Now, remember that this is the people variable. So I'm going to jump over to the HTML and I'm going to specify this, that every time I print out the people list, I actually want to print out app person, but many times. Okay, so this is how we're going to do that. So there is this an attribute called ng4. Okay, so ng4 is going to take in a string, and this is kind of like the start of our for each loop. Okay, so we're going to do let p of people. Now, careful, people is referring to the people variable here. Okay, so in our people list component.ts, this is the variable that we have. All right, so next, I'm going to bind the variable person to p. So remember, we said this square bracket is a property binding, right? So we're binding person to this variable p. So let p of people, this will give me a for loop. This will generate a p for every one of the people that are in my list, and I'm just going to call them person. Okay, I'm going to call them person, and I'm going to send it into app person. All right, so that essentially is what's happening here. Okay, so if we save this and compile this, you see it does its job. Okay, so this is saying for every person, P, or every person that's in people, we'll call it P, I attach it to the property called person, and then I just let person do its job. Right, so this prints out Bobby and Sarah and Steve. You see all these people have a specific way that we're going to print them out. All right, good. So right now we're pretty happy because we have an input that is going to bring this property person over to, this property person from people list down to person component. All right, what if we want to do it the other way around? So what if we wanted to have an output that goes from person component back out to people list component? Right, so you notice that what we had there was an input, right? So person was actually an input that was coming from the outside, right? And now you could probably guess that if I want to go in the other direction, this would be an output. So let's say that when I click on let's say when I click on this delete button, okay, when I click on this delete button, I want to send an output to the people list and tell them to delete this person. Okay, so notice that if I click on this delete, I'm actually clicking on the person component, right? But the problem is that this person component isn't keeping track of all the people. So they need to send an output over to people list and for people list to be able to handle that. Okay, so what I first want to do is let's go into the person component.html and let's add a little bit of logic here. So in here, I have this delete button. I have a class, so I'm just going to make it read a little bit better. So I'm going to have an ID is equal to delete, and I'm also going to create a event. Okay, so this is a click event. Now this kind of round bracket is an event that is triggered by Angular, and when Angular hears this click event, hears this click on this button, it is going to send it over to a function called onDelete. Okay, and it's going to send along the event. Okay, and I'll show you what this event object is in 1 second. But let's say I also send along this person dot name. Okay, so it's going to be the name that is going to uniquely identify this person. I know this is probably not the best way to do it, right? So you should probably have a person ID or something like that, but we'll just pretend that all the names in my database here are unique. So I'm going to send along this person name as well to this function called onDelete. All right, the next thing I want to do is jump back over. So I'm just going to save this, and I'm going to jump back over to person component.ts, and I'm going to create that onDelete function. I'm going to do onDelete, and I'm going to have an event. Right, so the first one is going to be an event. I'm going to make it an any event, and then the second one is I'm going to put the person name, which is a string. All right, so notice what I've passed in. So over here, when I call onDelete, I'm calling an event, right? So there's an event object, and I'll show you what this event object looks like in 1 second, as well as this person.name. Okay, so whoever I'm clicking, I'm going to pass in this person's name as well. So notice that this is the person component, right? So it has access to the person's name. All right, so I'm going to send over this name. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take the event and then person name, okay, is equal to person name. All right, so in this event object, I can attach an attribute called person name, and I'm just going to attach it as person name that's coming in. Okay, so I'm just adding another attribute to this event object. Now, while we're at it, I'm just going to console.log this, and I'm going to show you in 1 second what this looks like. So this is the EVT object that I'm now going to emit. Now, before I emit it, remember earlier I said I have to apply an output. So here, I'm just going to do an output, okay? And once again, output, it's going to complain a little bit because what we need to do is add output as a definition from Angular core. And so my output is going to be called delete. Now, this is just an object, which is a event emitter. All right, I'm going to do new event emitter. All right, so I'm going to have to add event emitter up here as well. That is also coming from Angular core, right? So I have an event emitter that is going to act as an output from this person component. Okay, I hope all of this makes sense. I'll draw you a diagram a little bit later on just to wrap all of this up. But imagine that when I click on the delete button, the onDelete function is going to be triggered, and this is going to make a event object, and in there, I'm going to attach person name in there, and I'm going to take a look at what it is. But then the final thing is I'm going to do this .delete .emit the event. And now, of course, from an earlier discussion, you know that anytime we have a JavaScript emit event happening, we're always going to need a listener, right? So we need to listen for this emitting of this event. Okay. All right. So so this delete is going to emit an event. Okay. So let's keep that in mind as we travel over to people list. So now imagine that the person component has emitted this delete event. So I want to be able to listen for that over here. So I'm going to jump over to the people list HTML, and I am going to listen for an event. Okay, so this is when delete happens. Whenever you see a delete event happen, then I'm going to do on person delete. Okay, I'm gonna write this function in 1 second, but again, we will pass off the event, and this event object is the exact same one that we've been seeing earlier. All right, so take a look at this notation. This is a listener, so that we're listening for this event. This event is called delete, which we've created over here. Okay, so this is the event that we've created in the person component.ts. Okay, so when we actually hear the delete, I'm going to call on this function called on person delete. So just in case I spell this wrong, I'm just going to copy this over. I'm going to go to people list, and since I know what this list looks like, I'm just going to close this up for a second. And down here, I'm going to implement this function. This function is going to have an event. This event is going to be in the form that it has a person name in there, which is a string. Now, I'll show you in a second what I mean by this, but essentially, what we mean is that there's going to be an input that has an event that has a person name in there. So this is an anonymous type, right? All I want is that this object has to have a person name in there, right? And it should, because we added it in there, right? Okay, great. So next, we are going to, I'm going to, actually, before I console.log, I'm going to make this person. So let per be equal to event.personName. Okay, so I'm going to grab this person name. This is the person who I want to delete from the list. So I'm going to take this dot people and I'm going to filter this person out. So this dot people and dot filter. And this person is going to have a name. So this is an object that has a name, which is a string. And I am going to do p.name is not equal to the per. Okay, so I probably should have named my variable a little bit better. Let's call it like delete person name. Okay, this is the name of the person I want to delete. Okay, it's still not a good variable, but maybe this will read a little bit better. All right, so if the person's name, right? So I'm going to go through all these people, and these people meaning these people, right? So I'm going to go through all of these people, and if the name of this person is not equal to the person I want to delete, then let's keep them. Okay, so this is returning this. Okay? And then I think that's all I need to do, but I think as a last step, let's just console.log. I'm going to say this is the person, and then we'll just regurgitate this person, env.personName just got deleted. Okay, cool. All right, so I think everything is good here. So I'm going to come back and it seems like everything is being printed out properly. So I'm just going to inspect this for 1 second. I do want to take a look at the console because the console is going to tell me a lot. So we're going to come over here and let's first of all delete this first person. Okay, so you notice that the first thing that we did when we deleted this person, let's follow the trail. So when I deleted the person, there's going to be a click event. As soon as there's a click event on this button, I'm going to call on delete. Okay, I'm going to call on delete, which is right here. So on delete is going to add this person's name to the event, and it's going to log the event object. So take a look at this event object, right? So there's a lot of stuff in this event object, but in particular, there is a person name in here, right? Person name is Bobby. So Bobby is the person who I want to delete. And you notice that he did get deleted, right? But the next thing is that it emitted this delete event. Okay, so over here, we were listening for the delete event, and when we hear a delete event, I'm going to call on person delete, and I'm going to regurgitate that event object, and on person delete is going to take that object, and it's going to filter it out from this list, right? So this list, I know originally it has these people, but it will filter out this Bobby, and then the rest is we're left with only Sarah, Steve, and Jane. All right, and then you'll notice that it is going to console.log person Bobby got deleted. All right, so that's basically what's happening in terms of input and output. So let me just do one last thing here, just for completion. I'm going to, in this person dot component, I'm just not going to console this event anymore because I don't want to see that every time. But I do want to console when I delete somebody. All right, so when I click on delete, it's going to delete Bobby, it's going to delete Sarah, and then whoever I delete on, it's going to delete that person until finally everybody is deleted. Okay, so this is running dynamically. I've just deleted the whole people list, but when I refresh it, it'll come back. Okay, now, of course, we don't want that to happen. And so we want our data to persist, and we don't want these people to come back once we delete them, or we don't want everything to be refreshed every time we refresh the page. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on, perhaps even a little bit later in our node series, we'll talk about doing that. But for now, just to do a little bit of recap, what you're seeing on the page here is that we have a list of people. So the list of people is organized by the people list component. So we have a people list component, which keeps track of all the people. Okay? Inside there, we are using the person component. The person component, its job is to print out the name, the added on, and the instructor, right, being true or not, as well as the buttons. Now, we are passing some data between the people list and person. So in particular, person list uses an input into the person component, which is called person. Okay, similarly, person, when I click delete, is going to send a delete event out to people list. Okay, so this is the current view of our application right now, and this should be a mental picture of what you have as you're building. All right, so this is all I have in this video. In the next video, we'll come back and we'll add more functionality onto this application. All right, see you then.